All right, guys, so here we have a very special episode of Blood Money, something that I don't think we've ever seen. The topic of this episode is called, Was Mike Little Poisoned by the Deep State? So, what you're going to see in this episode is you're going to see a gentleman by the name of Mike Little, that's the first clip, in the hospital, and he is basically recovering from a near-death experience, right? What people don't know yet, and what I've known for the last month and a half, is that Mike Little has been working on a lawsuit against the federal government for essentially proving that the federal government doesn't own any land in Nevada, right? So they've gone around saying that they own all this land in Nevada, and apparently they don't. And Mike Little has the evidence to prove it, which includes, by the way, the Bundy Ranch, who, you know, the Bundys for 40 years have been really abused by the federal government, who says that they own the land that the Bundys are sitting on. And Mike Little comes around, by the way, and has the evidence to show that the government doesn't own any of that Bundy land, any of that land that they claim they own, right? So what's the implications of this? If the government doesn't own all that land in Clark County, that's literally trillions of dollars worth of land, right? It also means that the Bundys, who were abused for 30, 40 years, their cattle killed, harassed, essentially military individuals coming down to confiscate the land, confiscate what is owned by the Bundys. All that stuff would have been fraud. All that stuff would have been abuse. And essentially the Bundys would be owed a lot of money in restitution for all the horrible things that these agencies have done to them. So that's one of the implications. The other implication to this lawsuit is that all these expensive casinos, meaning trillions and trillions of dollars worth of casinos, have been built on unlawful land. What is the implication of that? That is enough damage where literally the Federal Reserve could fall from something like that. The government could fall from something like that, because you're talking about trillions and trillions of dollars more added to the deficit, not to mention all these casinos in Clark County. Hundreds of casinos, hundreds of billion-dollar companies are now inhabiting land that they didn't rightfully purchase because the government never owned it and therefore didn't have the power to sell it. So now we get to Mike Little, who is the man who's been writing this lawsuit, who's the man who is going to be filing this lawsuit, okay? And as word starts getting out that Mike Little is about to drop this lawsuit, lo and behold, Mike Little ends up in the hospital near death, thinking that he's dying. We still don't know if he was poisoned or what happened to him. All we know is that with this lawsuit about to be filed, Mike Little nearly died. I'm happy to say that as of today, when I saw him, this footage you're about to see, Mike Little is recovering. Mike Little seems to have escaped the worst, but this is the sort of thing that when you're fighting for freedom, when you're going up against these very powerful interests, you know, things might happen. Like you might end up in the hospital having a near-death experience. So thank God Mike Little is still alive. Thank God, knowing what's coming down the pipeline. The bullpen of this lawsuit's a lot deeper than it was a few weeks ago, because there needs to be backup lawyers, backup individuals that are going to be filing this lawsuit should something happen to Mike Little. But these are the realities that unfortunately you have to deal with when fighting for people's freedoms. And I don't even think most people understand what's going on out there. That there's individuals like Mike Little fighting against government tyranny, showing that the government's been running a scam in Nevada and almost paying with his life for it. So please watch this episode. There's two essentially episodes. First is a quick interview of Mike Little in the hospital talking about his experience. Following that is an interview that I did about a month and I'd say 5 weeks ago with Mike Little about this lawsuit that he is dropping. It was done essentially as a kind of a precursor to that lawsuit dropping. We're supposed to drop that just the day before the lawsuit officially dropped. We are dropping it now because, frankly, Mike Little almost died and the cat's out of the bag. So since it's out of the bag, might as well let everybody know Mike Little and his team are suing the federal government for land that they don't own, and really sounds like it's trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars deficit for this government, having built pretty much the most expensive casinos in the world in this area of Clark County, which apparently they don't own. So that's not good news for the federal government. I'm sure they'll do everything to cover it up. I'm sure they'll try to toss it out on a technicality and say things like they don't have standing or whatever, but this is for we the people to be aware, because whether today, tomorrow, 2 years from now, this tide will turn, because so much of this has been done in a corrupt way because of corrupt politicians, absolute scumbags that have taken advantage of we the people. And here is Mike Little explaining the story, and definitely the interview after this, the one that we did about 5 weeks ago, gets into more detail. And look forward to our documentary, Bundys versus Deep State, produced by the America Happens Network, coming soon, that tells the whole story. One last message, guys. We have a GoFundMe page for this documentary we're doing called Bundys versus Deep State. It is below. Please donate. Help us make this documentary. It's a historic documentary. Very important that we make this documentary. So please donate at our GoFundMe page. How you doing, Mike?
I'm alive, barely.
So, man, tell me what happened. For the viewers real quick, I was at the Republican convention. I had no idea what's going on. I get a picture of you from about a week ago, and you're yellow, and I'm hearing that you're telling people that you're about to die.
I was about to die. I'm absolutely convinced that the Bundy case and the land issue being resolved that I'm moving forward on has motivated the government to try to kill me.
Wow. So what happened to you? Tell me what happened since, give us a little bit of a timeline. What happened? When did it happen?
Well, I'm not sure exactly, but it looks like the MO was tainted water. So what they've done is they went in and tainted the water, and it was the water itself that was the vehicle.
So what happened? I heard that about a week and a half ago. Is that correct? About 10 days ago, you started feeling ill?
2 weeks ago.
Okay.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago, I started to feel terrible, and then I couldn't retain any of my body fluids. So all of that extra was just moving through me.
Wow. And you were telling people that you thought you were about to die. Tell me about that.
Well, I'm absolutely convinced that I was about to die. The pain was just unbelievable. I can't even begin to tell you how painful it is. So,
it seems like you're in your recovery phase right now.
Well, that's what the doctors tell me.
What did they find? How did they figure out what was going on with you at all, or?
No. It's still undiagnosed.
But you felt like you were on the verge of death a week and a half ago.
Oh, I know I was on the verge of death.
And you think this is because of the Bundy case you're filing?
I think it has to do with Nevada lands.
Wow. So we've been talking about a deep bullpen because you're the one that's actually filing the case. But since you got sick, the people behind this case have essentially arranged for a lot of other people in case something happens to you, in case something happens to the next person. I mean, were you expecting any of this stuff when you started filing this matter?
No.
You weren't expecting retaliation?
I expected a judicial process that would have looked at things from both sides. But then having looked at the history of the Bundy case, and how the Bundys were treated, the realization, and the Ammon Bundy realization is there's no possible way that in a federal court you're going to get justice.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I am today. And the question in front of the court now is going to be a constitutional question about who actually owns the land legally, and how the judiciary, the federal judiciary and the state judiciary, are going to try to circumvent that process and acquire ownership on land they just certainly don't own.
You suspect that this was done to you intentionally in terms of getting you ill and the hospitalization. Are you worried that this is going to keep happening as you press forward with this case?
Yeah, absolutely.
But you're going to press forward.
Absolutely.
Why?
Well, because the truth has to be revealed.
Then what is the truth?
The truth is that for the last 157 years, Nevadans have had their resources stolen from them by politicians, both state and local, and then the likes of Harry Reid, where they do backdoor deals and gold and silver deals, precious mineral deals. They do wind farming, solar farming, you name it, they're doing it on land that the federal government doesn't actually legally own. So it's critically important that the truth not be revealed if the game is going to continue. Just too much money involved.
So, I mean, you got people out there that are scared of tweets and stuff, and you're out here talking about how you're potentially just poison, your health compromised, and you're about to dive right back into the game. I mean, what do you tell the people that are too scared to do what you're doing?
Well, I'd like to think that we're not a nation of cowards. That when we see something that's not true, it's not honest, yeah, you set course to correct it. And so my game basically is picking up where the Bundys left off. These poor folks did years of prison time by a federal judge and magistrate in violation of their constitutional rights, in violation of the Constitution itself. You look at my argument. My argument's pretty simple. If in fact the Nevada Constitution under the boundaries does not provide for the land that we're talking about, then it's not Nevada's land. It's just straight up that way. And it doesn't appear that at any point in time that the state of Nevada has actually taken the initiative to actually claim ownership of the land or jurisdiction of the land. In fact, quite the contrary.
Any message you want to tell to the people in closing?
People. Yeah, that's pretty simple. Don't trust your government.
Mike, you've really gone through this history of Nevada and what's happened here. Take us through the steps. Take us through the steps to years, all the documents that are out there, all the information that's out there, all the court cases that are out there, all the precedents that are out there. I'm going to give you a few things. You had mentioned some stuff in the 1860s, a murder trial in the 1950s. Bring it all together. Go timeline it. Tell us exactly.
Can we summarize it? That's a lot.
Summarize.
So first of all, we have to determine whether or not the United States actually owns the land that I'm talking about in the 1866 in Nevada. Mm-hmm. So that question's been answered with the sale of Hoover Dam in 1933. So there's no question that the United States, according to history, does not own the land they claim they own.
Explain that to people of what is the smoking gun in terms of the Hoover Dam and in terms of some of the precedents in these cases that show us that indeed United States does not own Nevada.
So if you look at the Nevada Rise statutes, you'll see that in 1931 they decided they were going to build Hoover Dam. The question is who owned the land on the Nevada side of the Colorado River? Well, it was determined that Nevada owned the land, and therefore the United States had to purchase the land, which they did for $600. They bought 80 acres to build the Nevada side of the Hoover Dam on the Colorado River. So that's memorialized in a statute, and so there's no question that at some point in time, certainly 1931 to 35, that land on the western side of the Colorado River, opposite of Arizona, was land owned not by the United States. Or otherwise they wouldn't have had to purchase it. So that pretty well puts that to bed. The question is, when did that land become property of Nevada, or when did it cease to be property of the United States, which would have been a congressional act in 1866. At that point, it was determined, and as much as people hate to say it, it was a quid pro quo. It was very simple. In 1864, we had the Lincoln election coming up. It was determined that if the state of Nevada would cast its electoral votes for Lincoln, that in exchange, they would add another 11,530,000 acres to the state of Nevada. So it was a gift after the Constitution, Nevada Constitution was signed. So they couldn't give it to the state of Nevada until Nevada had cast the ballots after the election. So if there's any question why the 11,530,000 acres didn't come in the original 1864 Constitution, it's because they needed the state to be in place to start with, and they needed the leverage of the quid pro quo to get the electoral votes for Lincoln. And that's where this additional land in the act came. So, having said that, that puts all of Clark County in Never Never Land. And in fact, if you go back into Nevada's history, in 1958 there was a murder up in Boulder City in which a man had killed another person, and they caught him and they took him down into Clark County and they prosecuted him and convicted him and sent him to jail. Well, he appealed that into the appellate court and said that Clark County didn't exist because it had never been lawfully taken into the state. And therefore it was a United States issue, not a state's issue. Well, that put it in front of a Nevada judge. The judge ruled that if that was the case, Las Vegas would be a Never Never Land, and they really couldn't have Las Vegas and Never Never Land in 1958 and 1962. So the issue has never been resolved, the land issue. It sits right now in the federal district court, in which Gloria Navarro had ruled that because of the Guadalupe Treaty of 1848, that she found that the United States did own the land. But the Guadalupe Treaty of 1848 is in conflict with the statute with Hoover Dam. So that's well after.
So basically, she's saying that in 1848, United States did own the land, but then the United States bought the Hoover Dam land in 1930, early 30s.
So they're saying that so a timeline would be in 1848, the United States acquired the land in the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. Then in 1864, they shaved off a part and called it, and actually in 1860, they shaved off a part and called it the Nevada Territory. Then they created an enabling act in 60-61 to make it a state. So it was a Nevada Territory, then a state in 1864. Well, the 1866 land didn't come in until 2 years later by a congressional act. So it was never a territory, Nevada Territory, and it was never a part of the state. So the only way the 1866 land could ever have been the property of the state of Nevada is if they had taken a referendum and the people had voted a referendum. Well, that didn't happen until 1979, 1981. And the LCB managed to write the language on that and failed to disclose that the land was actually owned by the people of Nevada. In fact, it cited that due to a flexibility issue that the land, they were just basically reconfiguring the boundaries to meet the existing circumstances. So here it is, you just stole the land again in 1981 with a referendum because you defrauded the people, you didn't tell them the truth. So that amendment is null and void, that void ab initio. Okay, so what's void ab initio.
Okay.
It's period, it's done.
Okay.
And so what we have is 11,530,000 acres of land that you would think is in Nevada that actually is not in the state of Nevada, has never been legally acquired or placed under the jurisdiction of Nevada. All of Clark County has never existed. Everything that's ever done has never legally been done in Clark County, because Clark County has never been and could never be formed by the state of Nevada, because the state of Nevada never took jurisdiction over the property in 1866. 157 years, land's been sitting out there. I roll up, decide I'm going to claim it. I claim it. That gives me possessory title. Means I own 11,530,000 acres, unless someone can prove in a chain of title that there's somebody else sitting in that spot.
So you're saying that because the United States really never owned it, by admission, when they actually bought the land from Nevada, and then Nevada never really owned it, really on paper, it is open to be claimed.
Yeah, it's abandoned. It's abandoned, not claimed land. So the United States passed a congressional act, and it ceased to be unappropriate federal public land. So it then became appropriated land, and it was appropriated for the purpose to become a state of Nevada, part of the state of Nevada, expand the boundaries. But the state of Nevada never formalized it, so therefore they never took legal possession of the land, and they never took jurisdiction over the land. And therefore the land was no longer in the United States, but it was never included in the state of Nevada. So now you have this big piece of land sitting out there, and the question is, who owned the land? How did the land come to be sold the way it is and have the entire Las Vegas Valley built on land that nobody owns? That's the question. And that's the question we're filing with the Bundys. You know, I approached the Bundys and I said, listen, here's the deal. Just what I told you, here's the facts. You know, you're being prosecuted certainly by the United States that doesn't own the land, and the state of Nevada certainly doesn't own the land. And therefore you're being prosecuted on land that neither of those two people own. But now I own it, and I'm going to go ahead and give it to you. Now they'll say they went back before when it was in Mexico, and that they have rights from that, which is probably true. I don't doubt that. I'm not interested in the Bundys' land. What I'm interested in is the truth, and that's what the Bundys were trying to bring, the truth. And the truth is that in 1864, Nevada became a state. In 1866, 11,538 acres were added, okay, which the truth is the United States gave that land away. So it relinquished ownership, no question about it. Now it can't unilaterally retract a congressional act. It doesn't work that way, you see? So the land's sitting out there.
So they relinquished it in 1866.
1866 by congressional act.
To?
They relinquished it and designated it to be a part of the state of Nevada.
Okay, but so why is it not a part of the state of Nevada?
So in 1867, the governor of Nevada, the first governor of Nevada, he in the records, he tells the legislative body that they need to go ahead and accept this land grant that the United States has given them. This is that quid pro quo we're talking about, for 11,530,000 acres. So the legislative body in there, they take a voice vote, and by voice vote, they accept the land. But then the governor tells them, listen, you've got to formalize this. We have to put this in front of the people in a referendum, and they have to vote on it, and only if the people vote on it can that land be accepted into the state of Nevada. Well, that never happened.
That never happened.
Never happened.
Okay. And then so let's now fast forward to, you are trying to help the Bundys, and Bundys are in jail, Clive and Bundy's in jail, and you bring up these facts to Judge Navarro. Explain to us exactly what they're.
Right. So I tell Cliven he's been making the wrong argument for about 30, 40 years. And that he needs to make this argument. So I give him the argument.
And the argument is that Nevada is not owned by the United States, hence and therefore they have no jurisdiction.
No. The argument is that the Congressional Act of 1866 conveyed 11,530,000 acres to the state of Nevada. But what it did was it relinquished the ownership by the United States. So that 11,530,000 acres, whatever status it may be in, certainly doesn't belong to the United States.
So basically the United States persecuting the Bundys was an incorrect way, because they don't own the land. So why are they persecuting somebody for being on a land that they don't own?
Resources. So you think about this. That land, Nevada's land, as long as it's controlled by the federal government, which means it's controlled by federal actors, which means that they're bought and paid for by special interests, that 1%. We currently, if you look at Nevada, we're probably the fourth largest gold and silver producer in the world.
That's the question I have. Could it be that the Bundy's land just has literally billions of dollars of gold underneath there? The government knows that, hence and therefore they want him out so they could mine that gold.
No, I think it's more that if the Bundys were right, then all the land would cease to be controlled by the United States, and all the special interests, such as like Harry Reid, they couldn't cut these deals like we have Canadian miners digging up Nevada's gold, and then after it's smelted, they send it to China, sell it to China. So that gold and silver and other precious metals that the people of Nevada would rightfully own, the federal government has control over through fraud. So they don't actually own the land, but if, like the Bundys, you say you don't own it, they swoop down on you and lock you up, they beat you up, they taser you, they'll do anything necessary to prevent you from actually making the legal argument of who the legal owner is and isn't. And that's what Bundy's problem was, is he was becoming a problem, and as soon as the Congressional Act hit the courtroom, which is the act I gave him, people ask right now, why is Bundy out 10 years later walking the streets and none of them are in jail, and how come his cattle are still roaming around on that land and nobody's doing anything about it? Well, the fact of the matter is the government realizes that they're going to let this dead cow lie, if you would, because if they bring it up again, the Congressional Act comes up again and the actual ownership. So in this case, it's better to continue to harvest the minerals out of Nevada, give them to your special interests, put the Bundys on the burner, don't bother the Bundys don't bother you, and business as usual in Washington, D.C. Special interests exploit Nevada's land, their minerals, their resources, and Nevadans don't get a doggone thing out of the whole deal.
So basically they're worried that if they push this thing too far with the Bundys, then it's going to be confirmed that all that land's not owned by Nevada, which would basically be very catastrophic because there's billions of dollars worth of business, of casinos.
Trillions of dollars.
That it almost seems like if this truth comes out, the United States government's in a big pickle.
Well, it's the fraud. You think about it from my perspective. You take it, the Bureau of Land Management, it sells a big piece of land, say outside of the Las Vegas area, St. Henderson or something. Yeah. It might sell that land for $100-200 million to special interest, right? Could be as much as 800 to a billion. The land in the Las Vegas Valley's been, it's pretty pricey. It averages a little over $1 million an acre. And so here you've got the federal government selling land that it doesn't own. Then the investors or builders buy the land and they borrow the money or secure the money from a bank. And then based on a letter of credit or a bond, the land gets conveyed to the purchaser, but it's held at the bank. So, or the investor or Wall Street, the investment group. So now what you've got is the people's land that has been sold out from underneath them. Then it goes into the marketplace. Then it gets developed, and when it comes out at the other end of the marketplace, it's your mortgage. That's a 30-year mortgage. That's what they call the penalty section of this party. You see, so you're now going to be forced to buy a piece of property on which the house is built that you're living in, that you rightfully owned before they actually stole it from you. So therefore, that house and that mortgage and all the principal and interest ever paid on that house, right, was all done fraudulently. They call long-arm fraud and stealth fraud and then intrinsic fraud on the courts. So that would mean that if that's the case, that every person who's taken a mortgage or a business loan or any business built their properties on fraud. Therefore, they're entitled to return of the damages. So if you paid off your mortgage 30 years, and let's say it was $200,000 when you took it, and you paid $600,000 in interest and $200 on the principal, that's $800,000. Well, you're entitled to all that money back. The government cheated you. They defrauded you from day one, and you paid for 30 years, and in turn, you're the victim of a fraud by the United States government in Washington, D.C. So you're entitled to that money because that was a criminal act. You see? That means, you just think about it. Every person in the Las Vegas Valley, you know how much money that is?
Yeah.
You start thinking about how many times these mortgages flip in these banks. Every time they sell them, they get a new mortgage, another loan. It's a ridiculous amount of money.
I mean, it seems like it'll make the entire Nevada banking system collapse if this comes out.
Well, it wouldn't be the banking isn't going to collapse because the people responsible are the title companies. They're the ones that shared it. So the fact that the fraud happened means the bank doesn't have a lawful lien on the property or on the mortgage. So therefore, the bank needs to take it up with the title company who assured the property was clean. So what basically what you've just done and what I'm doing is I'm probably doing one of the largest financial shifts in Nevada ever, because those people and all those mortgages no longer are lawfully in those banks. Holding companies, Wall Street, bundled investment deals, Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, none of it, all fraud. Therefore, most of the people in this valley literally own their land. They just don't know it yet. And so when
this would be the greatest transfer of wealth, correcting what seems like this fraud in Nevada.
That's correct.
Transfer of wealth to we the people, if people were to actually get involved in this.
Well, you think about it. If the people get involved and they know they've been defrauded in their mortgage, and now they don't have to pay their mortgage because they've been defrauded, and the government did the defrauding, so the government, instead of sending the billions and trillions of dollars overseas, going to have to pay the damages to their own people. So that would mean that if you had a $2,000 mortgage, let's say, and you're paying $1,800 in interest and $200 in principal, that $1,800 goes back in your pocket.
Yeah.
You don't have a mortgage.
Yeah. Now let's talk a little bit about the fraud. You talk about Harry Reid and how he committed fraud against the state, and some of these horrible politicians that have been using the land in Nevada to enrich themselves, to enrich their sponsors, their donors. Tell us a little bit about some of those stories about the fraud that's committed by our government officials.
No, enriching their family members. I mean, you look at Harry Reid, for example, and we can go back further. Harry Reid did the Nevada-Florida land swap in 1988. Here he took and used the Aerojet company as a straw man, then used a Maryland-based financial institution to do the underwriting, and after a certain period of time was able to get Aerojet to agree to do a land swap for some land in Florida, and then when that occurred and 45,000 acres of land was conveyed in Nevada, and Aerojet owned it, then the next thing, one of Harry Reid's good friends ends up buying it and becoming the land developer for a community. And Harry Whitmore, I believe his name was, and he ended up going to prison. And so, I mean, then there's the Moapa tribe, the Indian. I mean, that's another straw man. So Harry says he's going to give all the Indian reservations an upgraded land for economic purposes, and so he gives a few acres here and there to northern Nevada. But when it comes to the 1866 Act land, he gives the bulk of the land to the Moapa tribe so that they can go ahead and enter into a contract with the Chinese for a solar facility.
Oh, wow.
See, so when it was United States government land, it was against the law. It was a federal crime for that land to be used to by the Chinese government.
Yeah.
But Harry Reid, what he did was he conveyed the land by giving it to the Indians into a sovereign territory, and then the Indians could negotiate with the Chinese, and then Harry's family could be the legal representatives and the beneficiaries of the backdoor deal.
Wow.
So they've been on the take for some time. I mean, Harry Reid's deals go back to where he was with the mob in the 70s when he became the gaming commissioner. He was doing deals back then. Everyone thought he was running, tough on the mob. He was cutting backdoor deals with the mob. This guy was a notorious criminal. And you know what happens when you're a sleazy criminal politician? They name an airport after you. You see how that works?
Yeah.
So the sleazier you are, you should expect a greater legacy. And that's where we are. So I don't know what they're going to give Joe Biden. Maybe planet the moon. They'll name the moon after him. We won't call it the moon anymore. We'll call it the Biden, because you don't get sleazier than Joe.
Yeah.
So
wow, it's crazy, man. Tell us a little bit about what does the people have to gain if they actually follow this information you're talking about? Let's talk about the people of Nevada. What happens there?
So what the people need to do is they need to decide they want to move their mortgage into a people's financial institution. And at that point, it's out of the banking industry. They become their own banking business. And those mortgages, and all new mortgages in this area, would be 1%. So what you would do is you would immediately reinstitute the wealth going to the people. So the housekeeper in Las Vegas who's struggling $600 a week, who's barely getting by, right? They would be able to change the quality of their life because they wouldn't be renting. They would be able to afford a nice, moderate home, and they'd have ownership of it at 1%. So there wouldn't be a misery index attached to the usury, right? And it's that misery index that people are suffering with right now. The American misery index is usury in the banks. That's that interest rate. So if you think about the index, and you say a 1% index is probably 1% usury, which is interest, on a mortgage is probably a pretty light misery index. If you get up to 6-7%, all of a sudden you look at your mortgage and you're paying $1,800 in interest for 30 years and $200 in principal or less.
Wow.
That's the index.
So usury is basically another word for interest rate.
It's another word for misery. You say usury is misery.
Usury is misery.
Usury is misery. They want you to use their bank money so you can forever be be a miserable human being.
Wow.
And your kids will suffer, your family will suffer, and it's all because you won't do anything about it. The people won't actually do anything about it.
It almost feels like the slave state that people are not even aware they're in because it's been common to do this.
It's amazing to me that so many people can't connect the misery index to the usury. And they're willing to put themselves and their families through this financial nightmare to make a small group of people wealthy in Wall Street and the banking industry and politicians. And to do that, their families suffer and they suffer. But they're willing to go along with it. Can you imagine getting up every day and going to work? Say you make $200 at the end of the day and you give 150 of that to the bank?
Yeah.
I mean, that'd be pretty stupid, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Isn't that what they're doing with that mortgage?
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's just a matter of laundering the money through the usury system and cheating people. And here in Nevada, on this 11,530,000 acres, the game's up. They're caught. The complaint that we're filing, that I prepared for the Bundys and myself, reveals this game. And so now we're going to prove that the United States doesn't own the land. And the question's going to come very soon, who does own the land if the United States doesn't own it? And I'm telling you, the state of Nevada has never lawfully taken it into jurisdiction. So that leaves me as the only person who's claimed it. So I must be the legal owner. And now I get an opportunity to take these mortgages, bund them back into a people's bank, and they can take their loans at 1%. And then they can file a claim against the federal government to recover all of the money that's been stolen from them. I mean, if you're sitting out there right now and you know that you've paid 12 years on a mortgage and most of it's all gone to interest, let's call it an even $150,000, $200,000, you would think you'd want that back if you knew someone had stolen it from you.
That's like you could send 2 of your kids to college with that kind of money.
Yeah, or better yet, a trade school.
Trade school, yeah. We don't want to send them to those liberal colleges. But
I went to college.
Yeah.
What good did it do me?
Wow. So, wow, great information, man. Thank you, Mike.
You're welcome.
You're welcome. Is there anything we didn't talk about that's worth mentioning?
No, I just want the viewers to follow the lawsuit. That's the Bundy versus Biden.
Yeah.
And the viewers need to know that we're doing a Biden Bundy barbecue out at the Cottonwood Marina in the near future. And if they're interested, we're raffling off some of my land that's on the waterfront, and then we're going to be selling some of it also. So we're going to find out who does own the land, because I'm going to be selling my land and the government says it's their land, so I guess we're going to have to find out in the lawsuit, right?
Yeah, and just to be clear, you claim this 11 million something acres of land, right?
11,530,000 acres. 20% of the entire state of Nevada.
And you are the lawful owner. As far
I
as you're
am
aware.
what they say is the possessory title holder by a de facto claim.
Well,
So that puts me in a better position than the state of Nevada, who's not a de facto claim owner. They're an abandoner of land. And every time they allow the federal government to sell land in Nevada, which was just recently, that's another party admission of land abandonment. The state of Nevada is saying we don't own it because we're letting the federal government sell it. Well, I don't know what else constitutes an abandonment when you let somebody else sell your land to keep the money. Yeah, you know, Nevada has not been protecting Nevadans. Our politicians are just terrible, Republican and Democrat. Don't get me wrong. You know, so once they get to Washington, you know, all's good for these politicians. You know, but good for them, not good for us. So now we're going to take our land back, and if people want to join me in this, you know, I'm all for it. They'll be able to.
wow, amazing, amazing, brother.
Okay.